All right, everybody. Today we're gonna try and get this Husqvarna riding tractor up and going again. Been a long time since it ran. It's an LTH1538. Just put a battery in it yesterday. Pulled it out of a shed after sitting in a shed for about 9-10 years. So this will help. This video should pretty much help anybody with a Briggs Intech motor. They're all set up the same. So this one in particular is a 15.5 horse. I think between 15.5 and 19.5, they're all the same. All the way up to 21 horse, you find them on some John Deeres. So you start simply by taking the air box cover off. Set that up there. The air filter, get that out of the way. Yeah, you can see all this is, I mean, something's been living in here for a long time. An old middle school principal actually gave me this tractor. Very nice guy. All right, let's get into it. I'm gonna pause this and come back to it after I get the cover off of here and go over where the bolts were. Quick note, to get the hood off of this tractor, or pretty much any of them that have headlights, there's usually a clip here, just right here. It's 2 wires. Just pop this off of here. It's a lot easier with 2 hands than it is with just one. But all right. Wow, it's ridiculous. I just had it off here. Okay, please hold. Just had it off here. But it is like 100 degrees out and I'm sweating like crazy, so I'm sure that's not helping. Okay, there we go. So you disconnect the plug from itself, and then the hood has these 2 hinges on the bottom. Other one's over there. You gotta kind of like lift it forward a little bit, and then it should just pop right off. I'll just set this over here for right now. Get it out of the way. Makes things a lot easier to work on. All right, now to the engine cover. All right, guys. So you got 1 bolt here for your engine cover, and then moving around here to the front, you have another one right here, this one here, and then we have another one right there. Now those bolts, you can either use a 3/8 or a 10 millimeter on. So we're gonna pop those bolts off to get this whole cover off, this whole fan shroud. Also, a ratchet wrench is going to be your friend on these bolts here. I don't have one handy, but I have one. Ratchet wrench, remember, either a 3/8 or a 10 millimeter. All right, guys, so we got the 2 bolts out here, one here, one in the back here, and this one here. Now, most people tell you, oh, you know, don't worry about them 2 bolts in the back, just, you know, leave them out. Well, that's not the way it was designed, so make sure you put them back. I know it's a pain. Now, this whole blower housing lifts off of here. You might have to pull the dipstick out, might not, depending on your motor. Let's see. I know there's a surprise under here. I'm just waiting to see how bad it is. All right, let's see the rat's nest, shall we? All right.
Good God.
There we go.
That
Oh, under here's pretty clean.
That looks like
Cool. We got a whole nest here.
That looks like my dead hamster's bedding.
Wow, guys, we got a whole nest. Well, like I said, this sat in somebody's shed for about 9 years prior to me getting it. So, it's been in here for a little while. Now,
You can even see fur in it.
you can see fur in it, that's right. Now, if you're dealing with something like this, number one, you want to make sure that you clean all this off of here because it's just no good. You take all that stuff off of there, and that leaves you with the wiring for your magneto here, or coil wire, whatever the case may be. Then your starter wire should come up here as well. You might have a fuel shutoff solenoid wire that runs up here. It runs up between this shield and the cylinder head itself. So back in here, always check around for stuff like that. Make sure your wires are still there, connected, tight, and, you know, not torn out. All right, on to the next. All right, guys, so I think we got lucky here. Doesn't look like there's any clipped wires or anything. There was a at least one mouse in that nest, which is really unfortunate, but you know, there was one in there. He was long gone. He was like mummified. So we ended up cleaning out most of it. There's still quite a bit in here. But for the time being, we're more focused on trying to get this thing back up and running. And then once we do that, we can, oh God, it smells horrible. Then once we get it up and running again, we can pressure wash it. All right, next step, next order of business here is we're gonna disconnect this linkage here from the carburetor, and the linkage goes back into here. So this we're gonna leave alone. We're gonna follow this rod up to the carburetor itself. These are pliable to a degree. You can bend them a little bit just to get them out of the way. This little spring right here is more crucial than anything else. If this spring does not go back on, it will either run terribly or it won't run right at all. So make sure that this goes back exactly where you came from. This bar here as well, this is your choke and your throttle linkage. So you need that to go back on there in the same position it was in. Let's see if I can get a better view of that. So this bar here just kind of rests through this bracket. So it goes right back on there. So we're gonna disconnect that. Now, fuel line from the tank. I got lucky. There's not really a whole lot of fuel in this. Not that it matters. I wanna drain it anyway. If something's been sitting this long, drain it, you're better off. If the fuel line feels brittle or cracked or whatnot, you're gonna wanna replace that. This tank in particular is not that bad to replace the line on. But the line's actually not that bad on this, so we're gonna skip that. But as you can see, the fuel filter is shot. So we're gonna replace the fuel filter as well. So what you're gonna wanna do is, if you have gas in the tank, make sure you have a good pair of vice grips or something, and vice grip the line off this side. So when you're looking at the tank, this side of the fuel filter. That way, when you go to pull this off, it doesn't continue leaking all the way through here. Because if you take it off here, then it's just, you're wasting your time. Then, next order of business, you're gonna wanna take the intake tube off of here. There's a bolt here, and then there's one on the other side. Right there, yep, oh, nice, bug. Anyway, I believe, I can find out what size they are. Let's see, this is a 12. 12 millimeter, it's a little loose, so probably 7/16. Yep, 7/16 seems to be the size. So you're gonna have this one here and this one on the other side of it. You're gonna wanna take those two off. That will pull the nuts off of the bolts that hold the whole carburetor assembly on. All right, check back next. All right, guys, so we got the elbow off the intake here. The washer actually looks pretty good, so we're gonna be able to reuse that, I think. So there's a little orifice tube here. It's just an overflow breather. So that needs to be hooked into this too when you go to reassemble it. Something I forgot about in the previous video. So these bolts, I forgot. So there was nuts on the ends of these bolts. Inside here, you need like an 8 millimeter socket, preferably deep. This is like a semi-deep one on a 1/4 inch. So what you'll do is you'll take this side out first and then this side, then you can disconnect your linkages individually. It just, you know, proves to make your life a lot easier. As you can see, I already got my vice grips on this line here, getting ready to do that shortly. All right, guys, so we got the carburetor off. Here's the two linkages up here for this piece. Note the position. The thicker of the two wire goes here, then the thin spring goes on this side, and then same with the bottom orientation here. It goes to this hole right there. You know, be very mindful of that when you're doing this. This is the carburetor fuel shutoff solenoid. You need the wiring there so that the tractor will tell the carburetor to give it fuel. Now, we have the whole carburetor off in hand. Exterior wise, doesn't actually look too bad. Aside from, you know, normal use and abuse from, you know, 10 years of neglect. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop the bowl off of here. You're gonna need a very, very thin wrench to get the bowl off, or the shut-off solenoid off the bottom of the bowl. If memory serves me correct, it's like a 9/16 or something shaved down. I will find the wrench for that here in a minute and get back to you on that for sure. But we need to access the bowl anyway. We're going to clean the float. We're going to clean the main jets. We're going to clean everything out real well. We'll clean the exterior body last, and then, you know, reassemble everything back together as needed. And then we'll put it back on the tractor. But prior to that, we are going to suck the fuel out of the fuel tank and change the fuel filter. Maybe some clamps. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. All right, here we go. All right, guys, back to the fuel shutoff solenoid. So this is a Walbro carburetor on this Husqvarna motor, or I'm sorry, Husqvarna tractor. It's a Briggs Intech 15.5 horse motor. Now, we were just talking about the shutoff solenoid. Now, this requires a very thin wrench because you really don't have a lot of clearance between the solenoid itself and the bottom of the bowl. So they make wrenches for it. I use a 1/2-inch wrench, and as you can see the face of it, I just shaved the wrench down. If you don't have the capability of that, try and look for a low torque wrench. Look them up on Amazon or eBay. They're pretty inexpensive. You can usually get a whole set of them for like 15-20 bucks. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to pop this off of here and see what lurks below. All right, guys, so we got the carburetor apart. Now, what you're going to see here, first things first, you're going to see this is your fuel shutoff solenoid. If it doesn't move freely up and down like this one. Now, there's a couple things you can do here. You know, take your carburetor cleaner, soak this thing, like really soak it, and just, you know, kind of keep going like this for a while. This little part here is more expensive than an entire carburetor on eBay or Amazon. Now, you're not going to get a Walbro carburetor on eBay or Amazon for 20 bucks shipped to your door. You'll get some, you know, some knockoff. I don't know exactly what brands they are, but you'll get some kind of a knockoff off of there. And it'll probably work great for maybe 6 months to a year until you're back in the same situation. And, you know, anyways, at the end of the day, not worth it. If your carburetor is salvageable, please clean it and use it. The OEM stuff is way better. Don't cheap out on that Amazon junk. As you can see here, there's quite a bit of rust and corrosion inside of here. It's actually not as bad as I was expecting it to be. I mean, it's bad, but I've seen worse. Now, this is the fun part. You can always tell when somebody's using ethanol gas. So what happens is it gels up and it just gums up the whole inside of the carburetor. Now, there's little flakes here of just gelatinized gas and whatnot. Down in here, I don't know if you can see in there or not. It doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like you can see. But there is a very small flathead screw in there. Now, I caution you, if you're going to take the main jet out, be very careful. Them needles are usually in there very tight from the factory. And when your carburetor looks like this one does, they're usually a real pain to get out. Now, if you break the head off of it, just throw it away. It's junk. Don't worry about it. Just get another one and be done with it. Don't waste your time or your efforts. You'll never get it out right. Now, we're going to pull. There's a pin here that holds the float, the spring, and there's a little needle here that's really hard to see. You can kind of see it there. It's supposed to go in freely, in and out. It regulates how much gas fills up the bowl and when it sprays it out. Anyway, so we're going to clean this up and see how it goes. All right, guys, this is a very important part of the process here. You need to separate the bowl from the carburetor itself. This is the carburetor itself, obviously, as we've covered. Now, there's a little pin. That little pin sits in that hole right there. Goes straight through to the other side. There's no clip, there's no end, there's no nothing on here that's going to hold that in place. That little pin is right here. It's very small. And right next to it, as you see, it's something even smaller. This is a little teeny tiny needle. This little guy sits inside here. Oops. Sorry, my camera skills are off. And it, oh, oops, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, now, that little guy goes in here Oops, my fingers are way too big for this. Goes in here, and it sits in here and goes in and out. Now, that regulates how much fuel this has. Now, if you're in a bind and you're not sure how it goes back together, for reference, let's see. This is the carburetor float sitting correctly on the bottom of the bowl. This little tab here, there's a little slot in the float itself. I don't know if you can see that. And then this just sets in there. See? And now that's correct. Now be very careful when you go to put that back on, because sometimes the little needle will come out. That does happen. And then obviously you put your pin back in it. I'll do another video on this after I finish cleaning the carb and show you the reassembly in better detail. All right, guys, so we cleaned it up pretty good. So we're gonna reassemble it now. This float sometimes doesn't come as clean as you'd like it to. You know, it gets stained from the gas and whatnot. Now, I'm using some off-brand carburetor cleaner. Typically I would use 2+2. It works a lot better, but this works too. All right, guys, so we're gonna try and put the carburetor back together on camera now. See if we can get this dealt with in a timely manner so it's not taking up too much of your time here. All right, now, remember what we talked about earlier in the video. We need this little needle here. It's all cleaned up. Needs to go back in there in its little housing, right? Like so. Then take the carburetor housing itself. We just kind of guide that pin down in there. Okay, nice. And then you'll see the little notches here. All right, there's our hole, and then here's our pin. Now the pin has to go in there. Now it might take a little jiggle action back and forth to get it to line up. They're not perfect, but they're pretty close. So you just kind of wiggle that guy back into place, and as long as it goes over to the other side, it should be fine. See, there we go, just the end of it there, no big deal. Now the float is clean, the pin is back in, everything's cleaned up really well. I pulled this main out of here. It was a pain to get it out. Also, I realized this one here can come out too. This one here ends up getting clogged up a lot of times, so you can pop this one out of here too. Again, just a real thin blade flathead screwdriver. Make sure it's not too flat. I filed one down. I'll show you here. I filed one down a little bit, a bigger one, to try and, you know, be able to fit in the long tube here for the mains. But I do this a lot, so this might not be a practical thing for everybody, but it worked really well for me. You know, so if you have an extra flathead laying around, give it a shot. All right, step 2, we're gonna put the bowl back on. All right, guys, it didn't come up as clean as I would have liked it to, but you know what, that's okay. We'll let the pressure washer take care of the exterior housing. The inside is truly what matters the most. So you'll notice you do have one gasket on this side. There's not really anything on this side now, and that could be from deterioration over the years, or this also could be something that there's a gasket built into the elbow. You know what? Yeah, I think that is what it is. I think that gasket's built into the elbow because the recessed screw ends go in here. So, you know, it's always best to get a carb gasket kit with this kind of stuff. Me personally, I don't have one laying around right now. Otherwise, I would do that. But if you get a carburetor gasket kit for a Walbro carburetor for, you know, your Husqvarna tractor, you know, again, every single one is going to be a little bit different. But truthfully, it's the same concept with every carburetor on a small engine. The longer they sit, the more ethanol that you put in them, the more they gum up. But don't spend hundreds of dollars or even thousands getting stuff like this repaired when you could easily just watch this video and learn how to do it yourself and just save a ton of money. It's going to take you a little bit of time to get through this video, I'm sure, but well worth it at the end of the day. Plus, you learn a new skill. Anyways, we're going to get this thing back on the tractor so we can get that fuel filter going and try and get this thing started up. All right, guys, so here we are. Now, we got the intake boot back on the carburetor. The carburetor's back on the intake manifold. Now, our fuel solenoid shutoff is plugged back in here. It's just a little tiny clip. You just kind of pull this out gently. And it, pulls that out and then push it back up in. This is tight again. Don't over tighten this. And you're always going to want to spin this, to the left. That way you have as much wire access as you need. We rebuilt the carburetor. We got the cables back on where they're supposed to be. Again, can't stress this enough. Make sure that this little spring is connected. If it's not, you're going to have issues. Make sure that's connected. This guy's back on, back where it's supposed to be, back in there. We also put on the new fuel filter. It's a lot nicer than that one. That's the star of the show, Amelia and Aiden.
What's up?
So anyways, we got this stuff back together. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to try and give it a shot and see if it'll fire up. Please hold.